to school is one of the busiest times for parents and kids, and maybe in your home in the past, this back to school season has caused a lot of chaos and disorder, whether it's backpacks and homework and artwork and all the new supplies coming in and out of your home throughout the day. It can be a real struggle to stay on top of. So my guess is that you might be feeling a little overwhelmed or maybe a little dread about the upcoming school year. So let's talk about some ways we can curb some of this back to school clutter. So as a declutter expert who's helped coach thousands of people on decluttering their homes, one of my favorite places to focus on when it comes to back to school season are number 1, kids' wardrobe, number 2, kitchen, number 3, and this is a doozy that a lot of people miss, is your entryway or whatever you consider to be your entryway. Maybe you don't have a true mudroom or a true entryway. Maybe you have a split level home or walk into a really narrow hallway, but whatever space it is, that transition space between coming from the outside to the inside of your home is a big spot I want you to put your attention and effort into now. And also, let's not forget about your laundry room. Oftentimes for a lot of us parents and caregivers, there is more laundry to be done with extracurricular activities, sports, hobbies, all that stuff. And I find myself feeling compelled to purge my laundry room, just make sure it's all simplified before the school year starts. Now, by no means is this list exhaustive, but these are some of my favorite places that I focus on during this time of year. Okay, so after you've decluttered as much as humanly possible in those spaces, I want you to put your attention into identifying different drop zones within your home. Now, drop zones are essentially spots that you want things to live when they are either not at school or not in use. So when it comes to back to school, this would be a spot for things like backpacks, homework, artwork. Where do you want your kids and your family to put all these things? Shoes, things that you probably already have a spot for. Maybe you have a shoe bench, but maybe it would be helpful for you to add some hooks for backpacks or lower the hooks to your kids' height. The biggest thing when it comes to designing an entryway that actually works for you and your family is to make it as easy for them to do what you want them to do. If you want them to hang up their backpacks when they get home from school, they need to know where they're expected to put those backpacks. Maybe you label and identify where their stuff goes, or maybe you just coach them through, hey, when you get home, your backpack, you unload it here on the bench, and then you put all your paperwork in this bin right here. And speaking of bins, I wanted to show you a picture of our entryway. Now, we don't all live in our dream homes. My guess is nobody watching does, right? I don't either. I walk into a tiny 3-foot space. It's like so small. And I think it's the thing I like the least about my home, but we have to work with the physical space we got, right? So here's a picture of the entryway. We walk in from our garage into this entryway. You can see we have a shoe bench, and inside that shoe bench we have room. I've dedicated space for about 2 pairs of shoes each for a family of 4, totaling 8 pairs of shoes. Now, what that means is even though we have more than 8 pairs of shoes collectively as a family, the rest of those shoes live in the bedroom when not in use. So sometimes I've noticed coaching people over the years, every single pair of shoes that their family member owns lives in the entryway, even though they rarely get used. Maybe they get used for church on Sundays, but the rest of the days they sit there and everything's overflowing. The first thing you see is all these shoes when you walk in, you're tripping over them. So friendly reminder to make the space work for you. And maybe with back to school season, they have different sports clothes or different sports shoes that they need. Maybe those get placed somewhere like here. Or I have another idea for you in just a minute that changed my home and my life when it comes to drop zones and entryways. But you get the idea. So sometimes we need to get a little resourceful and get a little creative if the entryway we walk into can't hold all the stuff ideally that we'd love to keep there. Also right here, you see 4 hooks. We have 4 family members. Now, you've heard me mention lowering the hooks to make it easier for your kids to hang up their stuff. However, my kids are literally rock climbers. We go to a rock climbing gym. They have no problems hopping up onto the shoe bench and standing up. They're 5 and 7, by the way. So it's completely safe for them to do, and then hang up their hook. And then as it gets colder outside and they wear coats, they'll hang up their coats. You see a little spot for my purse here. You guessed it, that's my hook. And then, baseball hats. And then over here, you have a spot for keys and mail. And to simplify the mail process, I have that spot right on top. That's one little bin for mail. And then once a week, my husband or I go through that bin. We do kind of like batch work. It works well for us, spending 10 to 15 minutes once a week to go through the mail. And then we let it build throughout the week. That system works best for us. And I think when it comes to paper and mail and artwork and homework and all these things you might have question about that tend to build throughout the school year, is that it's less about the strategy you choose choose, and more about consistency. So choose a strategy that you can be consistent with. This one bin system might feel overwhelming to you. In that case, I'd break it down into maybe a 3-file system. So number 1, you could title end of day. This is everything you need to handle before the end of the day. Number 2 could be end of week. Anything that needs to be handled by the end of the week goes in there. And maybe the third one is FYI or temporary or scan or shred, right? If you don't shred, you don't need to create a file that says shred, but you get the idea here. And this is a friendly reminder here that the majority of paperwork that comes into your home does not need to be kept forever. So that temporary folder, I would highly recommend, and you can go through these a little bit each day and cull and get rid of what you no longer need and keep the few things you need to keep for years, which again, it's not much. Okay, so you're probably wondering when I'm going to get into homework and artwork. All right, so let's go back to that example I just shared. It's less about the strategy and more about consistency. And I wanted to make it easy for my kids to unpack their backpacks. Remember, they are 5 and 7. And so when they get home, you see that little bin that's sitting on top of our shoe bench where we sit to put our shoes on. That's where I've taught them to put all of their loose papers, including artwork, homework, announcements, whatever comes home with them, homework that's complete, homework that needs to get signed off, it doesn't matter. Everything from both of them goes into that bin. Now, this works for me now. It works great. I love it. If I had 3 or 4 kids, I'd probably do individual bins for each of them just to help keep everything a little bit simplified. And then I go through really briefly at the end of the night to see if there's anything I need to sign or know about. If not, I leave it all in there. And every weekend, either Saturday or Sunday, I spend less than 5 minutes going through and pulling out artwork that I'd like to keep. I'll teach you my favorite hack on how to keep the memory, but not all the stuff when it comes to artwork. So I go through the artwork, the homework, every single thing. And at that point, I decide, do I need this? Do I shred it? Do I recycle it? Do I keep it in a keepsake? What do I do with it? We'll talk more about that process in just a minute, but that's the system I love, use, and swear by. I've been doing it for years now. For incoming school papers of any kind, you can make it as complex as you want. Maybe you have a homework bin. Maybe you have an artwork bin that you separate and you want your kids to separate their things into. Maybe you have an announcement bin, or maybe you do the end of day, end of week, FYI thing that, age dependent, they can understand where things go as they pull things out of their backpack. My kids aren't at that age, and I think even if they were, they're probably not going to spend the time and go through their paperwork, which is why I prefer the one bin system. The thing I want to stress here is don't be afraid to test things out and to continue coaching your family and your kids on where things go so that they don't all land on the kitchen counter or on the kitchen island, right? Becoming the bane of your existence and becoming really, really frustrating for you. Let's talk art clutter. So what do I do as a declutter expert to manage all the artwork that comes from school? So there are 1,000,001 ways you can handle artwork. You can take pictures of it. You can create little binders like this for your school year and save your most cherished items, or you can decide on that with your kid. Now, because of my kids' ages, they're 5 and 7, I tend to make a lot of decisions by myself on what I want to keep for their keepsake bin and what I don't. However, if they started to express interest on having a say on what I decide to keep, I would absolutely include them in that process. But right, to each their own, we can all do things differently. So again, you can take pictures on your phone, you can create really cool Shutterfly books. But one of my new favorite things to do to curb artwork is to use a company called ArtKive. So with ArtKive, you can get your child's artwork turned into a beautiful mosaic or art book. So you can go from this to this. And it's a really special, beautiful keepsake that allows you to hang on to the memory, but not have to keep all the stuff. And so what I do, I showed you my one bin system earlier, right here in my entryway. The things I do decide to keep throughout their school year, I take upstairs. I have a small bin on the top of their closet shelves. Now, that is what I start to add their artwork to throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, here's me with the ArtKive cardboard box. I order one of my boxes from ArtKive. And then for the entire school year, I place all of that art into the box. I ship it to ArtKive with any special instructions, and it comes back in a beautiful mosaic or book. This is a wonderful, absolutely wonderful service. I'm obsessed with ArtKive, and I'm actually about to do this for my own artwork that my mom has hung on to for many years. And as she took some advice from her declutter expert daughter, she decided she no longer needed to keep it in her home and instead gave it to me. And so guess what? I don't need a box filled of my childhood artwork. I wanted to turn it into something beautiful. And so I'm turning mine into a mosaic. I will be sure to show you the final result as well as my kiddos. It is just such an awesome, awesome service. So ArtKive so generously offered my followers a $20 off coupon off your first box that you order with them. And what's really cool, if you have multiple kids like I do, you can put everything into one box. Once you order your box to fill up with all the artwork, and maybe you even have homework or special sweet notes or things that you'd love to keep but not keep. You know what I mean? So don't just think this is reserved only for artwork. All the instructions will be emailed to you. They'll also come in the box to simplify the process, and you'll be on your way to a less cluttered home. So you can use code Katie20 for $20 off your first box. You can thank me later. All right, I told you I'd promise I'd share you my life-changing light bulb moment I had several years ago because I was trying to shove everything that I wanted to keep in the entryway or thought I should keep in the entryway into that tiny 3-foot space. So here's what I call a secondary drop zone. No matter if you have a beautiful, huge mudroom or not, or a tiny space like me when you walk into your home, I swear by these. So a secondary drop zone is what it sounds like. You're going to keep anything that you don't need every day or close to every day, but still want at arm's reach in a space like this. Now, some of you might have spaces like a hallway closet where you can walk 10, 15, 20 feet into your home, and then you've got a designated spot for things like raincoats, right? I don't know the weather tomorrow, but I also don't want to have to walk all the way up to my bedroom to get a raincoat, especially during spring. So for things you don't want stored in prime real estate, aka your entryway or inside your home, your secondary drop zone, if you don't have a hallway to store or place that secondary drop zone in, inside your garage is actually perfect if you have one, or right outside your home, maybe even a front porch, and maybe you get like some type of covered storage unit where you can store things like that. Anything we might want ready for a hike is always ready to go here, and then I might add water bottles to it and grab and go. Now this is perfect. You can use this for sports, activities, anything, any type of lifestyle. Maybe you go to the gym, but you notice your gym bag just fills up the entire entryway. Create the secondary drop zone. I'm telling you, it's life-changing. As you can see, we also have a trash can. Now, this is by design. If your car tends to accumulate lots of trash and stuff, then you need a trash can right outside your car to, guess what, make it easy for your kids and you to do what you want them to do, which is to throw out their trash, okay? So get creative and think about anything that you don't want to track into your house can live right here. Okay, so you've got some ideas for your drop zone, simplifying your drop zone through decluttering. Maybe you relocate some of the items that you don't need in this season. Maybe you pull some of the items, place them like those extra shoes I mentioned into bedrooms or other spots in your home. Or you go, light bulb, that's actually a great item that, it doesn't need to be stored in prime real estate here in my entryway. I'm going to create a secondary drop zone to store that. And so as you are identifying these different drop zones and different goals you have when it comes to simplifying the back to school season and artwork and all these different things. So I want you to think to last back to school season, or even just the last school year when it ended, and think about different pain points and ask yourself, were those clutter or stuff pain points? Was it a drop zone or an organizational issue? Was it like a flow issue, or was it a systems and habits issue? Was it a combination of both, right? Was it maybe we just didn't have drop zones in place? Was my family not putting things back where they belong? Were we not doing daily resets for when they didn't put things back where they belong? The more you can get closer to the problem and that exhaustion and overwhelm you felt last back to school and identify the problems, the more easily you can come up with different solutions. So once you've decluttered, you've identified your drop zones, and you've established where you want stuff to live when not in use, have those conversations with your family. And you could say things like, last school year, I know we all got frustrated every single morning because we couldn't find your shoes, or the homework was regularly getting lost, or I was missing important announcements that came home from school because you didn't unload your backpack, right? And so here's how we're going to treat it differently this year. Here's how we're going to simplify. Here's how we're going to just get through this school year and thrive instead of just barely survive. And then coach them through the first few weeks of the school year until it becomes a habit. And let's face it, habit forming can be really challenging. Have you ever set a goal to create a new habit for yourself and within a week or two you've dropped the ball? Well, of course. And so let's offer grace, compassion. And again, that's the idea of doing daily resets and coming back as a family unit to tackle this problem head on. Use these tips because I promise you they have been game changing in my household for the whole school year and beyond, and can be for yours too. Back to school does not have to throw you back into a state of constant clutter and chaos. Instead, you can implement new routines to keep things as stress-free as possible. And if you're ready to end that clutter cycle right now for good, make sure to click that video on your screen right now.